Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're cracking open the rulebook for water damage restoration professionals, the NSIICRC S500 standard. It's a pretty heavy document.
It is. So our mission today is to translate that. We want to give you the critical knowledge, whether you're dealing with a massive commercial loss or just trying to understand what the crew in your basement is actually doing.
We're talking legal stuff, serious biological hazards, and the science of getting a building dry. This is your shortcut to understanding the pros.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's start with the language itself, because in this standard, a single word can mean everything. To hold someone accountable, you have to know the difference between a rule and a suggestion.
Absolutely. This is the language of authority, and it all starts with one single powerful word, shall.
Shall. That's the mandatory one, right? No wiggle room. This is law or physics.
Precisely. If the standard says a restorer shall do something, it's not a choice. It's a mandatory practice, often tied to public health or safety regulations. Skip a shall, and you've clearly violated the standard of care.
But the word that I think really defines a true professional is the next one down. Should.
I could not agree more. Should is still a core part of the standard of care. You have to follow it. But it's not because of, say, a specific OSHA rule. It's because it's what a reasonably prudent, competent professional would do.
So a contractor could just do the bare minimum shalls and skip the shoulds.
And they might be legally compliant in the narrowest sense, but they are absolutely delivering a subpar, unprofessional job.
That's the key takeaway for you right there.
It really is. In a dispute, saying, we followed the shalls just isn't enough. The shoulds are what define professional quality.
And then we get into the softer language.
Right. We have recommend, which is just that, a suggestion.
Yeah.
It's explicitly not part of the standard of care.
And may or can.
May is about permission. Can is about ability. Neither of those defines what's expected of a pro. The real standard of care, the thing you need to focus on, lives in shall and should.
That distinction alone is a huge tool. Okay, let's pivot from the rulebook to the actual danger. What makes one flood so much more hazardous than another?
It all comes down to contamination. We have three categories, starting with the cleanest, Category 1.
Category 1. This is from a sanitary source, right? A broken water supply line, a sink that overflowed, clean water.
Correct, as long as there are no additives or weird contaminants in there. But here's the critical fact about Cat 1, that clean water has a very, very short shelf life.
It doesn't stay clean for long.
Not at all. As soon as it hits building materials, drywall, carpet padding, soil, it starts to degrade. It can turn into Category 2 or even 3 pretty quickly. That musty smell you might notice, that's the first sign of trouble.
Okay, so the next step up is Category 2, gray water.
Right. Category 2 has significant contamination. It has the potential to make you sick. Think water from a dishwasher or a washing machine.
And what about toilets? That's always a point of confusion.
It is. A toilet overflow with urine, but no feces, is typically Category 2. It's contaminated for sure, but it's not yet what we'd call grossly contaminated.
And that brings us to the one everyone fears, Category 3.
Category 3 is the real deal. Grossly contaminated. It's actively filled with pathogens, toxins, you name it. We're talking raw sewage, wastewater backing up from beyond the trap, or any water from outside rivers, streams, storm surge.
The stuff that's in sewage is it's mind-boggling.
It's a serious health threat. You've got bacteria like Salmonella, E. coli, more than 120 different viruses, parasites. But the danger isn't just the living organisms.
You're talking about endotoxins. Explain what those are, because this is a hidden danger most people don't know about.
So the gram-negative bacteria in sewage have these things in their cell walls, endotoxins. When the bacteria die, either on their own or when you try to kill them with cleaners, their cell walls break apart and release these toxins.
And the problem is when restorers try to, save something they shouldn't?
Exactly. If you try to dry a sewage-soaked carpet in place, the drying process, the air movement, it can aerosolize those microscopic endotoxin fragments.
So you're not just dealing with the smell, you're breathing in pieces of dead bacteria that can cause a massive inflammatory response in your lungs.
That's it, precisely. And that's why the standard is so strict here. Porous materials, think carpet, drywall, upholstery, that get hit with Category 3 water. They should be thrown out, disposed of.
You can't clean them.
You can't reliably decontaminate them. The risk is just too high. So the mandate is clear. For Cat 2 or 3, you remediate the contamination first before you even think about drying. And you absolutely shall use proper controls and worker protection.
Deal with the poison before the water.
Exactly.
Which leads us right into worker safety. This isn't just about the science, it's about hard hat legal requirements.
That's right. In the U.S., restorers shall comply with OSHA standards. That's the legal floor, the absolute minimum.
And it all really boils down to one core principle, doesn't it? The general duty clause.
Yes. Every employer shall provide a workplace free from recognized hazards that could cause serious harm or death. And in restoration, that list of hazards is long biohazards, electrical, structural, chemical.
And most visible part of that is the PPE, the suits, the masks.
Correct. The employer shall do a hazard assessment for every job and provide the right PPE. For any microbial contamination, dermal and respiratory protection, skin and lung protection shall be provided. It is not optional.
I can't imagine being in one of those full suits in an attic in August. That creates its own set of dangers.
It absolutely does. Heat stress and heat stroke are huge risks for restorers. A proper safety plan has to account for that, how to prevent it, how to respond to it on site.
And it's not just the water that's dangerous. The building itself can hide things.
Oh yeah, especially in older buildings. You can run into asbestos or lead-based paint. The rule is ironclad. If you encounter friable or crumbly asbestos, work shall stop immediately. You call in a licensed abatement contractor.
A water job can't turn into an illegal asbestos removal job.
Never. And finally, there's the health of the workers themselves. Restorers should talk to their doctors about immunizations, especially tetanus and hepatitis A and B.
And some people just shouldn't be on these sites at all.
Correct. Anyone who is immunocompromised, maybe from chemotherapy or HIV, is generally kept away from this kind of work. The risk of an opportunistic infection is just too high. It's a demanding, dangerous job.
So once the site is safe and the contamination is handled, then we finally get to the drying, the science part. How do pros even know what dry is?
It starts with a really thorough moisture evaluation. You're using a whole toolkit: moisture sensors, thermal hygrometers for air readings, and both invasive and non-invasive moisture meters. And of course, thermal imaging cameras.
Ah, thermal imaging. I see those reports all the time. The camera says it's dry, so the job is done. But that's a mistake, isn't it?
A critical mistake. A thermal camera is fantastic for seeing temperature differences, for spotting where water might have gone. But, and this is so important for you to remember, it should always be verified with a moisture meter.
Because temperature isn't moisture.
Exactly. The camera shows a potential issue. The meter gives you the actual quantifiable moisture content. Never, ever trust thermal imaging by itself.
Okay, so they've mapped out what's wet. How do they set the target for getting it dry?
They find an identical, unaffected material elsewhere in the building. That's the dry standard. That's your baseline.
So you measure a piece of drywall in another room to know what the wet drywall should be.
You got it. And the drying goal is typically to get within 10% of that dry standard. You're just trying to return it to its normal happy state.
That sounds simple for drywall, but what about something dense like concrete or a big oak beam?
Well, that's where the real skill comes in. We call those low evaporation materials: plaster, concrete, masonry. They soak up water slowly and they release it even more slowly. You can't just dry the air around them and expect them to dry out quickly.
And that's where the giant fans, the air movers, come in. What are they actually doing?
They're fighting something called the boundary layer. As water evaporates from a surface, it creates this tiny, invisible layer of superhumid air right against the material, a little microfog.
And that fog layer stops more water from getting out.
Exactly. It's like a traffic jam for water molecules. The air movers blast high-velocity air across the surface to constantly scrub that boundary layer away, which dramatically speeds up evaporation.
So it's not about cooling the room, it's about breaking up that microscopic layer.
That's the science of it. And one last thing on equipment. Your home's HVAC system is not a drying system. It's built for normal comfort, not the extreme load of water loss. It can help, but it's not sufficient on its own.
It's a tool, not the solution.
Right. And speaking of tools, the administrative side, the paperwork, is just as important as the fans.
The contracts.
For your protection, a written contract should always be used. It needs to detail the scope of work and what done looks like, those drying goals we talked about.
Yeah.
And if things change, if you find asbestos or the contamination is worse than you thought.
A change order in writing.
It should be documented in writing. It avoids so many painful arguments down the line.
When does a situation get so complex that the restorer needs to call in another expert?
Usually in high-risk situations. If there are people with health issues in the building, like infants or the elderly, or if the contamination is really bad. In those cases, an indoor environmental professional, or IEP, should be brought in.
And the IEP is the unbiased third-party scientist.
Exactly. They're the ones who can do the air sampling, interpret lab results, and give the final all clear. They confirm the water category and set the remediation plan.
Okay, let's talk about personal belongings. The contents. How does a crew decide what can be saved?
They sort items by porosity. You've got porous stuff like clothes and books, semi-porous like unfinished wood, and non-porous like glass or metal.
And the water category determines the strategy.
Absolutely. For Category 1, clean water, you generally dry things first, then clean them. But for Cat 2 or 3, you flip that. The item should be cleaned first to get rid of the contamination, and then you dry it.
To avoid spreading germs everywhere.
Precisely. And for Cat 3, we come back to that really harsh disposal rule.
If it's porous and it touched sewage, it's gone.
It should be disposed of. The health risk is just too high. You can't truly sanitize a sofa that's been soaked in raw sewage. Now, non-porous things like a metal table can usually be cleaned and saved, even from Cat 3.
So at the end of the day, a huge part of the job is managing all of this against what the client wants.
A huge part. You have to document everything, especially limitations or conflicts like if a client refuses to let you throw out a contaminated rug. And critically, work shall be stopped or refused if a situation becomes illegal or just plain dangerous. That is a line you do not cross.
Okay, to wrap this all up, let's look at a case study our sources detailed. It's a perfect example of why just having the tools isn't enough. You have to use logic. It involved an engineered wood floor with random planks that were cupped and warped.
Right. And the inspector came in, took a quick look, and saw one closed foundation vent in the crawl space. And he decided, right there, that was the cause. He condemned the entire floor and blamed the installer.
I mean, that sounds plausible. A closed vent means moisture in the crawl space, which means a warped floor. What did he miss?
He missed the actual facts that his own tools were telling him. Fact 1, the moisture meter. The warped planks had the same moisture content as the perfectly flat planks, around 7 to 8%. So there was no excess moisture in the wood.
Okay, so it wasn't currently wet, but maybe it got wet and then dried out.
Good question, but that leads to fact 2. When wood floors get wet and swell, the end joints get crushed together. They push up. The inspector himself noted there were 0 compressed end joints, so a past moisture event was ruled out.
So you have 2 pieces of hard data that contradict his theory about the vent.
And then there's fact 3, which is just simple logic. If a site condition, like a damp corner from one closed vent, was the problem, the entire area of the floor would be affected. Wood doesn't just decide to warp in a few random spots here and there. The damage pattern itself proved his theory was wrong.
He chased the easy answer and ignored the science.
He ignored the data, ignored logic, and failed to apply the standard of care. It's a great lesson that expertise isn't just about having a certificate. It's about experience, hard work, and being able to think critically about the facts in front of you.
That was a fantastic journey. We went from the crucial difference between shall and should, which is really your quality checklist, all the way to the microscopic dangers in sewage, the physics of drying, and why you need to think like a detective.
And we covered a lot of the technical side, but I want to leave you with a thought on the administrative part, because that is so often where the real problems and conflicts start.
All right, here's our final provocative thought for you to chew on. We know that dense materials like concrete can take a very long time to dry, especially if water is soaked in deep. And we also know concrete continues to cure and release moisture for years. So if you had to install a sensitive floor, like hardwood, over that concrete slab, what specific level of dryness verification would you demand? And what kind of expert, beyond just the restoration contractor, would you trust to warranty that the slab is truly ready? That's the next level of thinking. We'll mull that over next time.